Did your tomatoes get blossom end rot this year? Don't worry, everybody gets blossom end rot at some point, and I've got a few tips and tricks for you to help with your tomato harvest next year. Hi, I'm Lauren Kane, and I'm the founder of Elm Dirt, where we make organic fertilizer that helps you grow better and easier. And I'm here to tell you about tomato plants like I've got behind me. This is our tomato plant. We planted it in a small pot this year. I'll show you a little bit more about it. But essentially, blossom end rot is one of those things that everybody dreads, and everybody's got tips and tricks on how to do it. So here's what you need to know about blossom end rot. Blossom end rot can be caused by a couple different things, but most common is from over or under watering. So that's one of those things that's really hard to control, right? If you get a bunch of rain one week and then you let it dry out, and you never know when it's actually wet or dry in the soil. So you have to be checking your tomato plants to be able to see when it actually needs water, and don't let it get too dry, and also don't let it stay too wet. Otherwise you'll be open to root rot. Now, what a lot of people think that blossom end rot comes from is calcium deficiencies. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff out there that says you need to bury eggshells under your tomato plants, or bury a tablet under there, or you need to do this and that at the beginning before you plant your tomato plant. And yes, calcium is important, but what those people are doing that are planting things underneath their tomato plant is opening themselves up for calcium lockout. So what is calcium lockout? Calcium lockout is when you have so much calcium in there that it blocks out other nutrients, especially magnesium. So if you know anything about human health, calcium and magnesium work together, and the same happens in plants. And if you add too much calcium, it actually locks out the magnesium, and so you can see this deficiency in there, but it's actually not calcium, it is magnesium, and it's because you have too much calcium. So I really hesitate for people to add all sorts of Epsom salts or add all sorts of calcium sources, because your tomato plants, yes, they do need that, and it's not present in a lot of synthetic fertilizer, but they don't need as much as most people are adding. So the thing about synthetic fertilizer is it only includes usually 3 things, if you're lucky: the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and the potassium, NPK. And when you have that, yes, all plants need them to survive. But plants also need a lot more other things. They need a lot other nutrients, like the calcium for tomato plants, but they also need that magnesium that gets locked out if you add too much. They also need things like iron, just like we need. They also need things like carbon and manganese and all sorts of other different nutrients. And so when you're looking at what fertilizer you should use, here at Elm Dirt, we focus on whole foods for your plants. So you're getting the whole nutrients. You're getting for all the plants so they can be healthier. Now, you're looking at me like, I've only worked with synthetic fertilizer. Why would I even need to consider all these other nutrients if I'm growing just fine? Well, you might be. Synthetic fertilizer acts more like life support for your plants, in that it helps keep your plants alive and helps keep them growing. You have to add more and more over time, and a lot of synthetic fertilizer is actually salt-based. And so the salts will build up more and more over time, which makes it harder and harder to grow unless you're flushing the soil with water regularly. So that's what our big downpours, soaking your soil, it'll help you get that salts out of there, and you might be able to grow just fine. But here's something you might not know. If you add too much nitrogen to tomato plants especially, they're going to focus on leaf production, and they're going to focus on getting more and more green leaves, and they're going to focus less on tomato production, and you're going to get less tomatoes overall. Another thing that happens when you add too much nitrogen is that the roots grow shallower and they don't have to work as hard, and then all of a sudden you have a plant that's actually pretty weak underneath. You may not be able to see it. It may look very tall, it may look very happy, it may have lots of green leaves from your synthetic fertilizers that you've been adding. But what you'll see later in the season is if you get drought, or if you get pests, or if you get funguses, the plant won't actually be able to tolerate those, and you'll struggle to keep them alive, which will also impact your tomato production, because that's what all of us are growing tomato plants for. Everybody grows tomato plants because they love the taste of homegrown tomatoes over store-bought tomatoes, and it's one of the most common plants that everybody loves to grow. But there are some tricky things to tomato plants, and they are actually very heavy feeders. They love a lot of plant food. But one of the things we've also shown is that microbes in the soil can help manage all this stuff for you. If it seems like a lot, if you seem like, oh my gosh, Lauren, these tomato plants are picky, I don't know if I can handle it, don't worry. The microbes in the soil actually do a lot of that work for you. They manage the soil pH, they help deliver nutrients to the tomato plants when they need them, as they need them. So the microbes actually talk to the plant roots. Sometimes they even go inside the plant roots and they act together to make sure that the plant gets everything it needs, and they can help increase plant growth, they can help increase root growth, and they can help make the plants more resilient to anything that gets thrown their way, whether that's drought, whether that's disease, whether that's pests. And so that can be really beneficial to help you grow your tomato plants easier. Some of the other things that we've learned over the years with elm dirt is that azomite, which is one of our ingredients in our ancient soil, which comes from volcanic ash, has actually been shown to increase the yield of tomato plants by up to 79%. You can get 79% more tomatoes by just adding azomite. And things like biochar and bat guano that we include in our ancient soil give you all the whole host of nutrients that your plants need to be healthy, to be strong, and to be resilient. And then our microbes help deliver those little pieces together. So if you're looking to grow tomatoes easier next year, you start with a ancient soil and you put it in when you plant your tomato plant, and then you feed plant juice at 2 ounces per gallon of water every time you water. About every 2 to 3 weeks is when you want to feed your plant juice. And once you start seeing little flowers or tomatoes start to grow, that's when you want to top dress with a little bit of blooming soil around the base of the tomato plants and switch to your bloom juice. And the bloom juice has different things from your plant juice, and the bloom juice is going to help trigger that blooming, help strengthen the plant as it gets into blooming and as it gets heavier and heavier tomatoes, because I know sometimes the tomato plant stems break as those tomatoes get really heavy, but it's also a sign that you have really good tomatoes that are on its way, and so you want to keep the plant as strong as possible so it can keep producing those tomatoes for you. And that's about it. Just keep an eye on the water levels, because that's super important to tomato plants, and make sure they get enough sun. And this guy has been sitting in full sun here in Kansas City for this whole season. It is now late September, and this guy has been going strong since mid-May, and we're still getting tomatoes. Sometimes it slows down when we get super hot weather, so tomatoes really, really don't like it when it gets above about 90 degrees, because then they slow down their production, they hold on to tomatoes, they don't make them red, they don't ripen, but once it gets into that 75 to 85 degrees that we're in right now, then it starts really producing some tomatoes. So I've still got blooms up there. I'm still gonna see tomatoes through October, and if it stays warm enough, maybe even into November, but we'll see. And so I want you to have tomatoes that you can harvest all season long and keep them healthy, and also make them not a chore, because I know some of you out there have been struggling to keep up with your blossom and rot this year and have been wondering what's going on with your tomato plants. And if you've got any questions, drop me a message below, comment on this video, send us a DM, or even email us on our website. Our website is elmdirt.com. You can find us on all the social medias at elmdirt, and I really want to hear from you, and I want to hear your stories, and I also want to know if you've got any questions for me.